This week on the podcast, Anthony and I covered a couple controversial topics like the inequality in men, the topic of wokeism, and the participation medal scheme. Just a disclaimer for all the listeners out there and viewers that the two of us aren't experts in any of these specific topics, and we don't claim to be either during the video. Just two dudes having conversations about interesting things. So hopefully you enjoy the video, and make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And yeah, enjoy the podcast. Get going.
Well, to start, let's touch on the participation medals in the workplace specifically, because when you say that, what comes to mind is I would say the workplace is almost a good environment for participation medals because sometimes it's just hard to keep people to stay. Like I remember working in the factory and we kind of needed those just to get people to show up for their shifts. And I'm not saying they're a good thing for people's character or society as a whole, but as far as just having a place run, it can definitely help. But even in other aspects, like when I used to do track, everyone got a medal, and it kind of diminishes the value of actually performing well to a certain extent. Obviously, you still feel good if you do well, but
Yeah.
not as good as you would if you really earned your position. Or
Well, and in the workplace though, if it's done properly, it's not bad. Like if it's a vote or something, that's okay because then you feel like you achieved something, and you won like that player of the month or whatever, like the team member of the month, fucking employee of the month, whatever you want to call it. But at a track, like you just show up and you get a medal. You get to go home, or sorry, at least a ribbon. What is it, like a white ribbon? Look, mom, I participated. It's a tough one.
It's definitely a dangerous thing to kind of make it a good thing that mediocrity exists instead of trying to encourage people to do better. We're kind of you did good enough because you tried instead of trying to meet a certain bar or a certain standard or just trying to push themselves ahead of the people who are above them or ahead of them or however you want to look at that. I think we kind of need that in a certain way because if we're not trying to strive for more, then we're not really going anywhere. And I'm one of the people who hold the opinion that if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. I don't really believe in staying the same or plateauing necessarily. I always think you're either going up or going down in the world. So to me, if you're not striving for more, you're kind of just whittling away.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to even plateau. Like when people say equity, like the word equity just makes me mad because it's something that's misconstrued through all these layers of filtration, and everyone just gets behind it because they're not up to date linguistically or their intelligence level. If you want to go off IQ points, they just can't understand what equity actually means, and it's very much a communist point of view where everyone has the same amount of everything except for the 1% of people who have way more than you, and they don't ever talk about that. They never talk about the tiny select few people that will succeed and have this extra financial freedom and just freedom in general. So when you look back at Soviet Russia, that's the most harm a country has done to its own people, other than obviously the Nazi Party starting the war and killing with all take wars out of the fact. But there was mass starvation. I think that Jordan Peterson actually said there was uncounted deaths by the millions because so many people were just starving to death. Then there wasn't enough people to track how many people are starving to death. So it's something I just kind of laugh, but it's just so ridiculous that a country could get to that state, and that wasn't even 100 years ago. That's we're right there right now. We're still the same people, man. Joe Rogan actually had a little clip on his Instagram talking about the remastered videos from World War II. They've actually slowed it down and made it look like they recorded it in today's technology. And he was mind blown. Yeah, in color too. So he was like, man, these people are all just us. They're the same as us. They're just there talking, having to smoke, eating lunch, and then they're fighting a war in the next half an hour, and some of them probably died. And we've seen situations like that with people like Jocko going overseas fighting in the Gulf War and fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran, and it's the same shit. It's just a different battlefield and maybe not as intense of a place for civilians to be harmed, because in World War II there was more civilian death by I think 4 million, 5 million because of the extermination camps as well. They counted those deaths into the whole pie chart that I saw. But still, like, there was just mass bombings. Like, Germany would just bomb England. They're like, yeah, let's go get them. Just take out as many as we can. It was wild, man. And like thinking that that is somewhere we could go today. And like when you're talking about this easy way, all our politicians, in my eyes, that I see, it's all just a theater for them. Like it's like they're just playing a game for whoever's peddling their pockets, and that's a very dangerous thing because Putin isn't. So Putin's like the person. Like you could say, I'm not trying to praise him. He's kind of gone off the cuff here and absolutely fucked everything up for the entire planet with the whole Ukraine conflict, but he's somebody that would not stand for a participation medal. I know that for sure. And we're over here, that's all we want. And that if we're fighting against that and we're going to try to bring that mentality into the fight, there's no way we win. So that's just my point of view on like, just bare bones on it. Just don't want to get canceled too hard, but I don't know. Like, I feel like you probably agree as well. Like, if you're in a state of war and the one team's going to do everything they can to win and we're just going to try to, I guess, not hurt feelings or people. So, you gotta.
It's a very advantageous position to be in when you don't want to actually fight the war that you have to fight. But speaking of this kind of topic, I want to dive into a little side note here, maybe like a different kind of warfare. But I want to know your opinion on Jordan's current position with like his license potentially getting revoked and the reasons behind it and the people kind of like fighting against him. And how do you think these kind of perspectives can kind of disseminate into how we treat each other or how we approach different situations, especially in the academic environment? Like, what are some of the consequences you can see from this happening or not happening?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it's still ongoing as well. So we only have like his point of view and then like the legislative piece of paper that he's posted from the colleges that are trying to take his license away to revoke his license. But essentially, when in my view, like they one of the complaints from the college was the entire transcript of one of his Joe Rogan podcasts. And that's like, bro, you're saying that that whole entire 3 hour conversation is wrong? Like, he should just have never had that conversation? And that's not true. Like, I've listened to probably all of them. I think he's been on Joe Rogan like 6 times, something around there, 5 times. One of the like the more frequent guests. And some of them have like a little bit of offensive points of view in there, especially if you're more of a liberal um, thinker when it comes to like gender ideology and maybe like I think their big point was him talking about the ecosystem and the environment because he doesn't believe that it's as big of an issue as most of the world's peddling. He believes there's other ways to solve these problems, and I'm just open for like creative thought. That I don't think there's one right way to do it because even if you're looking back in history, like every society falls eventually. So maybe we're gonna be like alive when society collapses. Who knows? But it's just a cool thing to look at because it's all the wokeism and like the people who really can't handle a different opinion trying to complain about him. And like a lot of the complaints, I believe he said they were not even his patients. So like, what's going on? Why are you complaining about me? You're lying. Like, these people lied to the college, said they were my patient, but then they weren't actually. Because like, I believe somebody like Jordan Peterson, when he says like this person wasn't my patient, he seems like he has his like X and O's crossed and tied and everything's locked up. So I'm sure he has like notes from every single patient he's ever had and still has them. So he probably went through all of that. Like you said, over the Christmas break, he was not happy because that's when the allegations came forward and he was trying to just enjoy his time and relax with his family and he couldn't. But yeah, I think it's kind of bullshit that if you just get complained about enough on the internet, it could just cancel your entire career and your entire like portfolio that you've shown you're competent and you can do things to help better people's lives and help people in general. So
Fair enough. So I would like to take a step back to the original topic of the podcast. And I would like to, I personally, I don't want to take too much of like a hard stance on whatever, because I know there's not a nuance to the situation. But as far as the disadvantage that men currently have in the modern day atmosphere, especially in the academic world, I would like to know some of your opinions and see how they contrast with mine, because I feel like as much as we had the movement of like equal rights for men and women, I think in certain aspects we may have kind of overdone it. And I think men have been put in a place in life, at least in our society, where I don't want to say we have to work harder because that's not the proper way to say it, but we have a very much an uphill battle compared to other aspects. Like I've seen the perspective that school is more catered towards women, like just the way they develop sooner, and it's
Yeah.
just better suited for them as an environment. So what are some things that like could help men, or what are some things that men are really lacking in? Like, what is your perspective on the whole ordeal?
Well, for example, like fields like psychology and medicine and like people-centered fields, that's like what we're kind of interested in, but it's probably because we have more feminine traits than masculine traits. When you get down to like, if we were to take a personality test, we probably would just fit better as like a psychologist than an engineer
Yeah.
or, a welder, something like that. But that's where men really succeed. Like, how many women do you see finishing college in the trades? Like 1 in 10, probably. Because like in high school, I remember there was only one person that did, two people that did well in the trades that were female, and then the rest were guys. Like they enjoyed shop class and stuff, and then the rest is just dudes. And it's just because there's sexual, um, I guess, basics for like a job, and that's like the basic sex for that job field is men, and it's because men can lift heavier things, and like scientifically, biologically, we have stronger bodies for the most part, so those guys tend to dominate that field. But
Mm.
um, yeah, I believe there was like an interesting stat about how females do better on tests in general than men. Like in a classroom, if you have to sit down and do a test, they're just better suited for it somehow. Like neurologically, their chemistry in their brain is just different. I'm not familiar with the scientific jargon for it, but um, I know that lately, like it's almost they're pushing a career on men earlier. Like, okay, go into the trades when we need people to go in the trades. That's the only path I was ever like offered through high school. I was like, yeah, just go to the trades. I don't know if it's similar to you, but like I remember you recalling that we never were told like, yeah, go to college, go get an education, and then you'll make yourself valuable. But now, obviously, I know that that's different, and you got to go get an education if you want to be successful in this world. So, we're working on. And like in my field with the psychology field and like behavior analysis, it's all girls, man. There's four dudes in the course, and I believe one of them dropped out. I haven't seen them all semester, so yeah, there's three of us left, and then I don't know if they'll all make it even to the end of the course, but it's four of us left. Sorry, there's five initially, five or six. I haven't seen two of them. Yeah, because the one guy just never came in general. But anyways, we have 55 people in our class at the start of the year, and there's five dudes. So, and that's
50 women.
like there's a lot of women at my school too. They're like our a lot of our classes this semester are in the basement, so that's like the nursing wing of the school. That's where all the nurse labs are. Just all girls, like obviously, because it's another female dominated profession, and the only place I see more men than females is the trades wings. Like, oh, here's the shop class, only dudes. So it's a tough one, right? Because sure, girls probably do better in school, but they do better in different things. So maybe in a field like ours, it's harder for a male to succeed because like our employers are probably going to be of the opposite sex, and they might have more critical opinions of us, like just like, why are you really here? Because I don't know if it's like this for you, but girls just come off with that more like motherly vibe, and like they're just nice people, that's why they're in this field. Same with like nursing. But um it's kind of a tough one because there is a bias, but it's a sex selected bias. It's just something naturally that they go to.
This is definitely a tough topic because, like, specifically in the field of psychology, it is definitely like a female dominated practice. But I
Now,
feel like we're missing out. Like, I feel like if it was more of an even distribution, like with females to males, I think it would benefit us all a lot better. Because even in my personal experience, like I go to therapy nowadays, I have never seen a male therapist. Like I don't even know if they exist. Like I've never seen one with my own eyes, you know?
Yeah.
So it's I understand that therapy is a job that anyone can do, but as a guy, I have guy issues and I would like the opportunity to like talk about things with another guy who's there to actually help me and has my genuine interest. Like as a man, you do experience the whole dynamic of like keep your feelings bottled. You can't like open up to people kind of thing. You get made fun of for being like vulnerable. And I think that we could benefit a lot if more dudes out there had the opportunity to go express themselves with another guy in like a safe environment instead of kind of being forced to talk to women. Not that that's an issue by any means, but like there's better like there's it's just a different way to relate to someone when they're of like the same sex.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can feel like they understand certain issues, not necessarily in a better way, but it's just sometimes you want that feedback from someone else who's also of the same sex. Like girls have girl talk with girls, guys should be able to have guy talk with guys in that therapeutic environment, in my opinion.
Well, even when it comes to like shaking somebody's hand, I can't recall shaking a female's hand ever. It's just something it's just weird. Like I even asked my one professor, I was just like, what do we do when you're trying to shake a hand with somebody? Like I actually can't remember ever shaking hands with a female in like an authority position because they never like stick it out, you know. But if it's like me and another dude, it's like boom, fucking first thing, you know, you get a nice firm handshake. But
Yeah.
she said just do it, and we'll shake your hand back like you're supposed to be the one. And I was like, okay, easier said than done. Maybe it's just my like fragility as a male. Like maybe I need to be more open and touching the hand of a female. But it's definitely something that like I don't ever experience, and maybe that's because I'm the issue. But like when
Maybe.
I'm working towards like finding a career, right? I'm gonna wanna just do that. I'm gonna next like female authority person I interview with, fucking handshake, bro. Not just a hey, how's it going? Because I always feel like I don't know, like you just can't touch a girl, you know? Like oh, even that, even a handshake, that's like too much in today's society. Maybe COVID fucked me up. I don't know.
I understand like the dilemma. Yeah, I get it. It's different. You'd feel like you need permission instead of just approaching like
Yeah.
you would with a male authority figure. You just get in there. You want to have a good first impression. You just send it. But with a woman, you feel like you have to kind of walk on eggshells a little bit more.
And then
It's
handshake to leave.
yeah. You got to put the door first. You know, you can't.
Yeah. It's gonna be buttered up.
Yeah.
But I get we basically covered like that's everything that we could really talk about with our limited knowledge, anyways, of the topic for just like the easy way. And um, the inequality for men is like a really tough one. I'm sure there's tons of studies being done that we could come back later in a podcast specifically develop for that issue, which that'd be fun because I do have access to peer reviewed studies, and I think you do too as well with your like if you're
I,
still
yeah.
with Loyalist. So
I, yeah.
yeah, we could get different ones too because the libraries aren't all the same. So that'd be nice. I think I'd really like to do that. I'm gonna put that in my notes before I forget. Like actually just like find a good study or two or three and talk about it, like kind of like how Huberman does. Um, but the next topic would just be wokeism that I wanted to kind of cover this week and how we're kind of noticing it change everything in our life rapidly.
Yeah, I don't really understand what wokeism actually means as a term.
Yeah.
Like I
Well, it's a made up word, so
yeah.
I don't think anyone does.
My assumption is that it's just like being politically correct, calling people by their pronouns or whatever, never saying anything even remotely like controversial, just kind of sitting in your bubble. You don't want to offend anyone or step on anyone's toes kind of thing. That's what I think of when I hear the term wokeism. Just
Yeah, like a very broad spectrum, and that's good. That's how like everybody probably views it if they don't waste hours and hours like I have listening to podcasts about how it's affecting like our infrastructure as a society. Like The podcast I actually just finished today, it was one of Jordan Peterson's most recent. I forget the name of the guest because it's the first time I've seen him, but he's some older dude. He used to be a professor at Harvard and like big Ivy League universities. Excuse me. But back in the day, it still costs a shitload to get into like Yale, Harvard, Stanford. But the thing is, you needed to be like this competent to get in. You had to meet the bar, and you still had to have all that money. So it wasn't just rich like people getting in just because they're rich. I'm sure it happens sometimes, but not all the time. Very few and far between. And he's saying now that they're trying to abolish even taking the SAT test, and like, because you'd have to do that to get in. You'd have to like prove that you're smart enough for the course. They're saying that that's discriminative now, and that that's like something they're trying to get rid of in the college, which or university, sorry. Which personally, like, I don't see any benefit to that other than maybe the college universities making more money, because then just more people can get in, and then there's just more bankroll for your year or however they budget their spending, and the fact that what did he say? They're trying to teach classes without grades. So you'd get your test back and it just isn't graded. But the professor knows the grade. You don't know your grade. None of your classmates know your grade. And then like at the end of the course, it's just like, okay, you're done. You passed. Like what? No matter what. Like even if you're garbage, like there's a movement to get rid of gradings and grading systems in general, because apparently that's discriminative. So it's like there's the easy way, right? There's the participation medals. Then there's this woke ideology of because you're there, you deserve the education, like the diploma you paid for. But that's not how it works. It's
Yeah.
like you enter in to like a $10,000 a year test. That's what it is. Like you're testing your mental capability and competence, and what that's literally getting rid of all of it. And the military's doing the same thing. They're just lowering the requirements for all their physical tests so females can be accommodated, so more females can join the military. And then also they're trying to recruit more diversely now, because there's white rage is something that they're calling it. So apparently white men have this inborn rage just against other like races and sexes. I've never felt that.
That's good. Do they, Jason?
As far as I know, I've never felt this white rage that everybody's talking about. But also, like, we're in Canada, so it's a bit more covered up. In the States, I feel like they're bigger, right? So they notice it more, and like it's more in the news. Like it's on Fox News, they don't shy away from it. But in Canada, we don't really have like a conservative news station. We have like CNN's that we watch, and that's all United States. There's like CN or CSNBC or some shit, which is also like CNN but just Canada. So like it has even less viewers. But mostly people in Canada that watch like mainstream news just watch American news. So it's interesting to me because things can happen in Canada and Canadian citizens don't even know about it until it's already happened and like has been happening for months. Like the whole trucker thing, we only knew about that because social media. Like Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and people posting things on like the map. I don't know if you remember, but during the trucker thing, when they were blockading everywhere, it showed like on your Google Maps that there was all red traffic and like a huge ring around Ottawa because like no one could get in and out. It's just hilarious. But I wanted to ask you, like, have you ever encountered from anyone in a workplace, like, since you're a minority group member, so you're not like me, pale skin and white raging all over the place. Has anyone like tried to talk to you about like joining like an activist group or anything like that, like a fundraising group or whatever they worded it as?
No, not for me. My dilemma is that I don't fit into any specific category, if that makes sense. Like I'm brown, but I was raised white. Some people, like a lot of people, mistake me for being Indian, so I don't fit in any box well enough for them to kind of include me in their group, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. Sounds terrible,
they
but like,
can't stereotype you right off the bat.
or almost at all. Like I'm literally just calling me light skin's the most you can get. Like that's the best you can do. Like, when I'm around white people, I'm black. When I'm
Yeah.
around black people, I'm white. When I'm around Indian people, I'm just not one of them. So it's this weird it's this
You're
weird
white.
thing.
It's still white.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I don't think people would feel comfortable asking me about something like that.
Okay. See, because that's only happened to me once, but it's been about like a women's advocate against violence against women. So like the girl gave me this leather patch with like a moose on it and like a pamphlet piece of thing. And I was like, oh, what's this? And she's like, oh, it's just something like I'm trying to spread awareness against like, I think it was actually for Aboriginal women. So it's like, it's another like one of those marginal groups, like a stereotype group. Like she starts it off like I'm trying to raise awareness against violence against women, and then she was like, but it's specifically Aboriginal women, like Native American, and for this part of Native American, I forget the tribe she said. It was like Anishinaabe or something like that.
Yeah.
So you know that's what they're starting to do, especially like when you look back. Barack Obama was the first person to do this, like on par every time he spoke publicly because he isn't dumb. He's not a stupid person. He got to where he is for a reason, and he's the first person to put race like into the huge sphere in modern society. It was always like, you know, I'm going to be the first black president. But then like two speeches later, he'd say it's bigger than black and white, and like he tried to race bait as much as possible, but then still come off as like it's okay. I love everybody, and like that. I think it was like 90% of African Americans voted for him this first term, and then like 40% voted the next term because they saw how bad he actually was. Like they were like, man, this is not good policies. But that's also an opinion. Because, you know, people don't like Trudeau, but then there's that just over majority, like 55% of people that love Trudeau, and he's still our prime minister. So I guess we'll see come election day, but I believe our Conservative Party finally has a leader that knows what he's talking about. His name's Pierre Poilievre. I know we're getting a little bit into politics here, but he's totally against the whole wokeism, and he's kind of like, people are comparing him to Trump, but he's not like Trump at all. Like, Trump is very vulgar. He will like say maybe a swear word in a speech if he really has to, or if he's asked a question that he thinks actually is stupid, he'll just not answer it. He'll be like, fake news, on to the next one. But Pierre Poilievre, in his most recent interview, CNN asked him a question, and Trudeau was trying to ban hunting rifles, like all of them, and the bill got shut down because obviously, like, you know, people need to hunt still, and like he was taking away every single hunting rifle in this bill. And then so CNN was trying to cover his ass. I forget the exact question they asked, but it was something stupid, and he just laughed at the person and then answered the question anyways in a very like intellectual, put together way. And then he said it in English and French, which Conservative Party has struggled to do that. Like when it comes to politicians, conservatives are usually English speaking, and like they'll speak a little bit of French, but he can speak fluent French and English. So he has like what Trudeau has in the French vote and also the English vote, because, you know, Quebec's pretty fucking big and a lot of people live in Quebec, and it's an important voter part of the, like, you know, our political landscape. But just back to the whole wokeism, I'm surprised you've never been like, I guess, you know what, you'll see it more when we move to the bigger city. Like, there's a lot more groups like that. Like my one professor, she's African American. She came from Ghana, and she moved here when she was 8. So now she's like, you know, has a pretty thick accent sometimes. Like, it depends on what she's saying. But she's amazing. I love Professor Blank. I'm not gonna, you know, say her name, but she's awesome. One of my favorite professors this semester. But she's in like a black advocates group for like, I think just black people in Kingston. And I was like, interesting. Like, I wonder if there's a white advocates group. Probably not, because then they'd be called like neo-Nazis or some shit. It's just, I don't know. I've never seen like, and no one's ever come up to me and been like, hey, have you like heard about this going on against the white people? And that's a touchy subject because, like, you know, I'm a male, I'm white, I'm supposed to have everything I ever want at the snap of my fingers. So, I don't know how you feel about that. Do you believe like male privilege exists?
I think male privilege. I believe in like more general things. Like I think pretty privilege is a thing. I do think male privilege is a thing in certain aspects. Like if you're a good looking, like above average guy, you're definitely gonna have some advantages and like other people would have. But I don't believe that like white men as a whole have an advantage over other ethnicities. I think there's some white guys out there who are really struggling and don't have the benefits that are oh so spoken about. But I do
Yeah.
believe that, yeah, a good looking white guy who has a head on his shoulders has an advantage over other people. I don't think it's because he's white, though. I think it's because he's not dumb and takes care of himself and he's good looking. I think that applies to other people, like the Indian population. You see a good looking Indian guy who has a head on his shoulders, he gets the same treatment as the white guy, and
Mhm.
people don't want to acknowledge that. And we saw that, and like the at least in the factory I worked at was the best example of that because I
Yeah.
think we had mostly Indian individuals who had higher up positions, and they were all smart, good looking guys who took care of themselves, and other people who occupied other positions were like white guys that were good looking, took care of themselves, girls who like occupied the same positions, good looking, took care of themselves. People who work hard and try to earn their positions get the positions. That's just how it is. I don't think there's any racial issues nowadays. I think that's pretty well a thing of the past, at least in our area of the world.
Yeah.
I
Well,
really
and that's what wokeism's trying to do, though, is they're trying to bring it back into play and say that all these issues are a thing, which I'm sure in some parts of some places in the countries, right, in two North American countries, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure there's racist people. I can't say there's no racism. There is racism, but not like an overarching racist agenda, all white people against everybody else. And yeah, if you're competent, you're good.
it's not in the city. Like no one's getting on the bus and asking you to give them your seat. Like it's happening in like rural communities, if anywhere.
Yeah.
Like who haven't been touched by the modern way of thinking or whatever, however you want to interpret that. But it's people who are just kind of far removed from things, and all that's all they really know. So that's all they have.
That's their culture, is just like, we don't like different.
Yeah, I it's hard to say this without sounding like derogatory in a way, but their cultures haven't evolved to the state that we're at, where they're willing to accept certain things that are worth accepting, because not accepting them brings you no real benefit. Like I don't really see an upside to being racist.
Yeah.
I just don't.
It's just something that's like a learned behavior. You are taught how to discriminate from a young age, and then you just keep doing it. And then, like, eventually it dies off. Like, with that, like what you said, the new modern way of thinking. Like, my grandfather definitely was racist. Like, 100%. But that didn't trickle down. So it like ended with him. It was his generation. Just they're the last like racially um, fueled individuals because he was born in what? Let me check my tattoo here. 27, 1927.
Okay.
So right, he's literally like a teenager in World War II, and then he lived through like the Cold War, Vietnam, like everything, all the hard shit, which is crazy. Like we're lucky, bro. That's another problem I have is our generation is so blessed. Really living in the best time ever to be alive. Just shut the fuck up and live. Stop worrying about all these little tiny ass issues that don't actually matter, and like you're going gray over them. I don't know. That's just my point of view. Like you said, I feel like it's an old thing, and if you don't evolve and just kind of accept everything, then there's a problem with you, and that sucks. But I can't say it any better than how you said it. And then the only other thing, like I wanted to talk about for wokeism, was apparently big institutions like the FBI, CIA, and the military. So those three are being intruded. Like it's just like they're bending over backwards for the woke ideology of being inclusive to everybody and letting it's like they're hiring purposely to have different ethnicities in their ranks, which might not be a bad thing, but at the same time they could just be skipping over like an African American guy just to hire an Hispanic guy because they already hired too many African Americans for the year. So like because they literally have like quotas apparently that they've set, and they can only hire a set amount of each ethnicity each year. So it's like, what the fuck? Why? Like
Weird.
it
Yeah.
just seems so ridiculous and counterintuitive to me, because then you're just skipping over somebody who is competent for the job and not even giving them the chance because you've already like met your white quota for the month, or black or Mexican even, like, or no, you already hired 10 girls. Sucks. It looks like we're not hiring any more girls.
Yeah. It's
So if that's true, that's ridiculous. And like I don't think that'll ever be able to be repaired unless there's like huge reconstruction done. Because that'll just be like the people who created that rule. It's just like racism. It'll go down to the next generation, and then maybe one day when that generation decides like, hey, this isn't good, then they like what just happened with racism. Like for the most part, it's just gone now. But yeah, like rule changes take generations, and that's where maybe population collapse is a good thing. Because we're not having enough kids either, and that's another issue with this whole woke ideology is, and like we just talked about, with more females being in school than men by like tenfold. um, they're like focusing all their energy on a career, and they're trying not to have children for as long as they can. And then when you hit 30 and you want to have kids all of a sudden, and you're with somebody you like love, and you try for kids and you can't have kids because you just can't anymore biologically, fucking sucks to suck. Just looks like you're not having kids anymore. And I feel terrible for those people because kids are the best thing ever. But kids bring out like the best in everybody. And one of the good examples for it was when Jordan Peterson used to take Michaela for walks in like Montreal, where all like the bikers were and stuff. These like manly biker men would like get down and be like, "Oh, hey, Michaela, nice to see you," and like talking like a high pitched voice. But we're not having that anymore. There's no kids being had. Like our generation, bro, I think we'll be the last generation that kind of has kids because we're 25. And I know like a lot of girls who went to high school, and even guys, like guys a year older than me and you, and then like a year younger, they're starting to have kids. But if you look like 6 years down, it's not going to happen. It won't be the same. They won't be having kids. I cannot see it. And like my
you
sister's generation, they're not having kids.
like you think they're gonna be waiting longer to have kids, or they just won't be having kids?
Like they will wait, and then they won't be able to, just because
Okay.
biologically, like it's almost impossible. Like once you turn 30, that's like, you better have a kid that year or within 5 years. And then what was the statistic? It said that 50, for the first time in known history, 51% of women above 30 are childless, which is like, whoa, dude, it's a
That's scary.
problem.
Yeah.
Because like we didn't necessarily have like the best circumstance to be brought into in this world, but it just happened, and now we're here, and we're here for a reason, and our light is being shown on to everybody, and like that's what the point of having kids is. It's just have a kid. Like when people say, oh, it's too financially, I can't right now, like everything's so expensive, I don't want to bring a kid into this world. Oh yeah, well, what about the baby boomers, bro? They just finished fighting the Nazis, and they came back, and everything was like super expensive, and they're like, yeah, let's have 10 kids, let's go. So I don't know, it's just mindsets, man. That's all it is. It's a
Fair
tough one.
enough. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever ready. It just kind of happens, and you just
Yeah.
step up late. That's what it seems like. I don't have a child, so I don't really know. But
Well, and you don't have to know. You're a big brother, so you've seen like how it works. You've seen people come into this world, um, and I gotten to witness how they grow up, and it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but life isn't. And I think that's the problem with wokeism and the easy path to victory. That everybody just thinks that we should live in this perfect bubble, and if my bubble pops, oh fuck, I can't have kids anymore. Now I got to build my bubble again and like be safe. And maybe I'll try now, and then I'll find a guy for 5 years. My bubble's still okay. Oh, just kidding. He left me for some other bitch that he met at a bar. Like it's just insane, man. People wait too long. Like we're only on this planet once, and YOLO, as the kids would say. But it's a hard topic just in general, and I'd love to talk about it more in depth with like statistics behind us as well. Like if we did a podcast with more of a purpose on like a certain study. about just like the topic of wokeism, or how inequality for men is affecting the workforces. Because like if you even look outside right now, I'm sure it's mostly men out there salting the roads and like plowing.
I don't know though. I'm inclined to agree, but I really don't know. I'm sure there isn't like no women out there doing it, but I would say there's probably more men than women doing it. At least 60-40, if not higher.
And same with like paramedics and shit too. It's just all females now. Like I've seen like the last time I went to the hospital, anyways, I was there for a good 8 hours just waiting in the waiting room. Love Canada. But every time an ambulance came in, the paramedics would like come in, whatever, talk to the triage nurse. And it was just two females each time, and there were two different females like every time. I was like, what the? And it's because it's a cool field. It's a medical field, and that's like another female dominated degree. And until you get to like doctors, my family doctor is a female, but her husband's a male. And then like most of the other doctors in my family doctor's office are just men, but they're older. So we talked about this a little bit in my research methods class. If you were to take like a study on tenured professors at any university or college, and you did like they have to be 40 and up, 45 and up, it would
Mhm.
be mostly men, mostly white, and like mostly of European descendants. That's like just how it is in Canada and the United States. But then when you get like under that 45, 50, it's like very diverse, and it's starting to show like how our society's changing, and for the better for the most part, like without somebody getting into a job just because they are that skin color and that's what they need. But like with that quota, if that quota is a real thing, but I hope it's not a real thing. I hope that guy was just bullshitting on the podcast. um yeah, that's pretty good. I think we covered it all, like from what with our bare minimal knowledge of these topics.
Yeah, keep
um
in mind, everyone, we're not experts. We don't claim to be experts. We're just two dudes having a conversation. So, with that
just
being said,
chatting.
this is probably the perfect time to get into your segment of what you learned this week at school.
Yeah, and it's more on, I think my favorite piece will be more on my behavior analysis course this week. So usually like the last two episodes have been like ethics, research methods and ethics. But we talked about stimulus control, and I think that's has to do with like wokeism as well. So just as like a brief description of what a stimulus control is when we're talking about behavior is, so like if I go to the bathroom, I usually bring this like all the time, my cell phone. So if I wanted to not go on my cell phone when I went to the bathroom, I would simply leave it on my desk and then go to the bathroom. So that's like I'm controlling the stimulus that I'm intaking by changing the environment. So while I'm on the toilet, there's no cell phone to use. So I have to like do something else, right? Like maybe bring my book that I'm trying to read, trying to finish this one still. I actually read 10 pages today, so in the chaos of a Sunday. Um, but we had a nice oral presentation, like we had a group presentation after, and they talked about daily smokers and not regular smokers, and it was a pretty large study. There's like 297 regular smokers and 194 non-regular smokers, and it showed overwhelming results when they tracked, because it was a self-result study, right? So keep that in mind. You could lie of how many cigarettes you smoked. Like if I said I smoked 10 cigarettes, but I actually smoked 25, they'd never know. But still, we took their word for it in the study, and 300% of the time, more often than not, you're going to intake a stimulus while other people are doing it. So, like, when they went out to a bar and they were offered a cigarette and, like, there was a group of people smoking, they smoked every time. It was like you couldn't say no. If you're under the influence of alcohol, you're going to just be more influenced by peer pressure and by the environment, right? So, when it comes to, like, wokeism, nobody wants to fight back. The only people that fight back against like that ideology is like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand, and Russell Brand is still like woke, but in my eyes, but he's not like super woke. He's like trying to just be a good human, and that's what wokeism stemmed from. But they're just getting a little bit off course now because power corrupts people. And when you try to control the environment of a workplace, and like I'm only gonna hire 10 black guys this year, it can change the whole workplace. It's going to change the behavior of everybody in the workplace. It might make it a more effective workplace. It might make it a less effective workplace. But that'd be like an interesting study to conduct, right? Like, okay, let's see if we only hired white people at my massage therapist's place. I bet less people of other ethnicities would come and get a massage. I bet my clientele would be all white. That mostly happened. That's just my assumption of like my hypothesis for if we did that as a study, because I'm assuming people would feel more comfortable with somebody of like let's say it's all white males at my massage parlor. Females aren't going to come in there. Males aren't going to come in there, like of the opposite ethnicities. But maybe we'll get like white moms, fucking coming in. They're like, oh yeah, Joe gives me such a good massage. Like, just my stupid hypothesis, but when it comes to stimulus control, it's one of the easier ways to change behavior. So, like for you, for example, what did you do to stop playing video games?
I got rid of my console. I just got rid of it.
Like literally, it's not in your possession anymore, so you couldn't play it even if you wanted to. So that's stimulus control right there. So you've done that multiple times. So there is like a relapse that can happen. So
It definitely it works though. It definitely has worked the best out of anything else.
yeah, it seems like just from the one lecture we had in the chapter in the textbook, seems like it's the most effective way to bring like immediate behavioral changes, because obviously if you're taking something out of the environment that you're trying to change, it's going to change. But when it comes to like talking to people as well, I noticed that you can really control your own stimulus when you're intaking like a good conversation. You can make it last longer if you wanted. And if you're having a bad conversation, you can just yeah, I'll see you later. And it just applies to everything in life. So I'm looking forward to like reading up more on peer reviewed studies of stimulus control and talking a little bit more in depth about it in our next year's course, because we go on placement and we talk more about it again. Because obviously we're going to need to learn how to like track somebody while they're underneath a stimulus control plan, because in the examples it's like you add let's say I add a helmet so that the child doesn't hit his head anymore off like the desk, stops self-injurious behavior. That's something that is very common apparently, is self-injurious behavior, and they just usually put something that takes that stimulus away, because they usually like the feel of like smashing their head or hitting their hands real hard off the walls, and like you can change that stimulus pretty easy. But unless you're not monitoring it, like you can have a spontaneous recovery during the extinction protocol. So just like what I've done before is like, hey, I still got my computer, let's reinstall Overwatch here, let's try it again, see what's new. And like then your behavior spikes again, and then you can come back down if you still wanted to not do it. So yeah, it was a pretty cool week. The team that presented wanted me to watch them present before too, just to make sure. I felt pretty honored. I was like, okay, because I'm the big lobster, uh, and they were like actually hoping for a good like I'm the big lobster, can't feedback, a good feedback session. And I even had like quick little notes here that I took. So just one thing that they were doing, they during their presentation, they had like those Popeyes stick candies. Do you know the ones I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So they're not the greatest candy, but in order to see like the reaction of the class, they walked around in between slides. So like one girl would present, then another girl would walk around and give like two people one of those sticks, the candy pieces. And then at the end of the presentation, they had a question, and it was like, so which of you got a stick? And we all raised our hand, and then they were like, which of you would like a stick? So that's like a stimulus control right there, because they were, or a study right there, because I got a stick, and the people around me saw like how excited I was to get the stick, and I was like enjoying it, and then they both were like, yeah, I want one. The fuck, man? Jake got one and I didn't. So they did a great job, but my professor's a harsh marker, and they got like 3 out of 4, like, or 2.5 out of 4 is 70%. So my oral presentation, dude, I'm stressing, but it's like good stress. I'm like buttoning down the hatches, and I'm trying to make the presentation, like the slideshow, look as good as possible. And yeah, it's gonna be a nice end of the semester, because we don't really have like many assignments. We have a couple assignments, and then it's mostly just tests and team assignments. So I hate group work for the most part, but you know how it is. We played soccer, so we know how to work in a team, and it's yeah, you make it work. And even if like, you're having a disagreement with somebody, it's healthy usually, because like for the most part during this podcast, Anthony and I shared the same views on a lot of the topics. Like Anthony's not as familiar as like what being woke is as I am, and I could have gone for like another hour on it, but I'm not as well versed as I'd like to be, right? So I don't want to just talk bullshit. But yeah, we definitely share opinions. So next week we're hoping to have a guest on, and maybe have somebody challenge our opinions. So that'd be nice. And maybe dive into somebody who's a little bit more interesting in a different aspect than us, because personally, we're cool as fuck, but I'd like to learn more from other people too. So that's what the whole point of this podcast is to just bring our point of views to light, and also explore other people's thought processes too.